So welcome everybody. My name is Megan. I'm from the C.C. Mellor Library in Edgewood. And thank you so much for coming. We are starting some of our new and exciting Zoom programming for adults. So this is a brave new world for us. So I'm super glad that you guys have stopped by and joined us today. The library is open to the public again, so feel free to stop by and say hello. We are open 12 to 6 Monday through Saturday for browsing and computer use. We're also doing curbside pickup of holds, for completely contactless library service. And you can find out all of that information on our website, which is ccmellorlibrary.org. You can also follow us on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and all kinds of social media, which is where we're posting about more programs like this. We've got a sourdough baking workshop coming up. We've got 9 Mile Run doing a presentation about invasive species. We have a psychic coming in to talk about harnessing the power of your intuition. So we've all kinds of cool stuff going on. Spots available in most of those programs still. So visit our website to find out more. Follow us on social media. You can also go to ccmellorlibrary.org/donate if you enjoy this program. If you want to see more programs like it, your donations are what make this possible. So thank you for all of your support. And with that, I'm going to introduce Jody Shapiro, who is a Forest Hills local. We love her. She loves her library.
Thank you.
And she is going to give us a wonderful presentation about preserving your personal history. So Jody, take it away.
Thank you, Megan. I appreciate it. I want to thank you, and I want to thank the entire staff of C.C. Mellor. I love my library. I was so excited when our Forest Hills branch opened. I used to live near the Edgewood Library, which I used to frequent often. So I love our library. So thank you for all you do, and thank you for inviting me today. And welcome, everybody. I'm sorry I can't see all of you. It's so sad. I had really wanted to do this presentation in person, but Zoom's the next best thing, and we'll get through it. So I just wanted to say thank you for coming. My name is Jody Shapiro. I am a Forest Hills resident, almost lifelong. I actually live not far from where I grew up, which is pretty cool. We don't go far in this Pittsburgh area, do we? So I'm excited to take you on this journey. I call it 5 Steps to Preserving Your Personal History with Photographs. And personal history and photographs are just one of my passion projects. Some of you may know my husband and I wrote the Forest Hills book, our Arcadia's Images of America series, and that was on the history of Forest Hills. So I have a real passion in history, but more of the personal history and the community history. So my hope is after we go through these 5 steps that you will jump right in and start telling your own personal history and create something for your family, for your kids, for your grandkids, maybe even to donate to C.C. Mellor Library, maybe even create a book for your library. But just to create a living legacy. I think it's really important. So I will tell you, bear with me, I do tend to talk fast, so please put in the chat if you think I'm talking too fast. And also, I do have an elderly dog living in my house right now, so hopefully he will not start barking. So just so you're aware, I will try my best to keep my boy quiet, but he may bark. And it is not the one on the picture. I'll explain her as we go along. So I just want to do a quick bit of housekeeping. I think it's really important in this new COVID world to do a little bit of housekeeping. Zoom etiquette. Please have yourself muted if Megan hasn't already muted you. You're welcome to leave your video on or off. That's up to you. Just remember though, when the light is on, we can see into your house. And so just to be aware, I was on a Zoom not long ago where a gentleman sat down, took his shirt off and started eating a sandwich. So it was a little strange. So just remember that we can see what you're doing, and I will leave
I'll
mine
interject here
on.
for a moment, Jody. This is being recorded as well. So, if you are not comfortable having yourself shown on the recording, I encourage you to keep your video off.
Thank you, Megan. That's a very good point. So just so you're aware, and you can see the arrows, this would have a slash through it if you were going to have your microphone off, slash through on the video. The chat button's right here. It should be on most of your screens. It may be a little different if you're joining us on a phone. And you can chat to everyone, or just to Megan, or just to me, or is it just, I don't know how this one is set up. Let's see. You
Looks like
can,
we've got it set to everyone right now. So anything you'll
perfect.
send will be publicly viewable, and I'll be keeping an eye on the chat. So if there are any questions that you have for Jody, I can make sure that she sees those along the way.
Okay, great. Very good. So I appreciate that. So I am going to engage you guys. So be familiar with the chat button. I'm going to ask just a few yes and no questions as we go along, just to make sure that I'm meeting your needs in the presentation. So let's jump right in. Are you guys ready? Okay. So one picture is worth 1,000 words. So true. But I always say an album full of them are worthless if they're sitting on a shelf collecting dust. I mean, think about it. Most of you probably have a picture or pictures that just has some meaning to you, that takes you back, that brings your whole history out. And so the goal of this presentation is to help you find those pictures and actually do something with them to create something meaningful for your life and for your family. So they just are so useless when they're sitting on shelves, and sadly sometimes they're going to be disappearing, and I'll have a little public service announcement about that as we go along. So I have an agenda for today. It's very simple. I told you I'm going to tell you 5 steps to preserving your personal history. These are the 5 steps. These are what I want you to think about and what we're going to go through. So first I want you to think about, what is your story? And everybody has a story. I have not met a person yet in my almost 60 years that does not have a story to tell. So everybody has a story, but I want you to think about, as we go along, what's your story? And I'll have a lot of suggestions and prompts for you as we go along to help you develop your story. Then the next step is probably the most important step, which is actually finding all of your photographs and your history. And you'll see as we go along, that sometimes can be a little bit challenging. As is the next step, which is preserving your history, because photos are starting to disappear, and that's really sad. So I'm going to talk about how to preserve, and then obviously show and tell and showcase your personal history. Then some assembly required is pretty self-explanatory. Once you have all of this amazing material in front of you, what are you going to do with it? What are you going to create? And I have some suggestions to help you in the process. And the very last step, which in some cases is one of my favorite steps, is to help you think outside the frame. And that means find other ways you can preserve your story, because you can turn a lot of things you never thought about into a photograph with today's technology. And so I have a couple ideas for you on that. So ready? We're going to jump right in. So first of all, I want you to think like an author. So what is your story? Now, I was a journalist and an English major in college, and these are the basic 7 things that authors think about when they're writing, primarily fiction, but it works in nonfiction too. So what is your story? Is it a quest? And I've translated that into just a general photographs of your life from birth to now. You're on a quest in your life. You want to tell that story and have your family remember it. Maybe your story's about a journey or a homecoming. Maybe you're an avid traveler and you've taken dozens and dozens and thousands of pictures. So your story may be about those trips, and those photographs will write that story. Maybe your story's a comedy. I don't know how many of you took pictures in college that were funny. Now with cell phones, it's a little scarier. Some of the pictures that are taken, it was a little different when I was in school. But maybe you have a comedy story to tell about all the funny things you did when you were in college or on a football team, or, in elementary school. That you can have a story that's a comedy with pictures that can be really a lot of fun for your family to see. Tragedy is one of the biggest ones, and sadly the 2 personal history books I've written for myself are both tragedy, and I'm going to share those with you. And that's about losing someone or something you've lost. And you'll see that doesn't always have to be a sad story. In both of the ones I've written, they're celebrations of life. So it is something to think about. Rags to riches is the old-fashioned, so many stories, fiction stories are built on that rags to riches. But you can use your photos to talk about that too. Maybe you had really humble beginnings and now you're an entrepreneur and you run this amazing business, or you have this beautiful family that you want to showcase. And those are your riches. So you want to share them. So think about that as your theme, as your story, your art, when you're building your photo history book. Rebirth is pretty simple. How you became the you of today. Maybe you had, it's a combination of rags to riches and just a rebirth. I mean, maybe you have this wonderful story of how you became who you are today. And then there's always the underdog story. So a time maybe when you thought you would lose, but you won. And it could be maybe you made a historical play in a high school football game, or you did something where nobody thought you were going to succeed, and you have this wonderful story, and you have it in photographs, and so you can share that with everybody. So these are what authors do. So I encourage you to sit down with this list when you're going through this process of creating your personal history and thinking about these themes, and that'll help you solidify what you want to put in. Now, obviously, the quest number 1 is the easiest to do, but you might want to niche down, or you might want to do 7 different books, or you might want to do 4 or 5 of each. So, you know, it's just some food for thought to help you build this story of your life. So now the magic question, step number 2, finding your photographs. So where are your photographs? And most of the time I ask people that, and they're like, I don't know, everywhere. We're going to go through some of the places where they are, and you're going to see they probably are in more places than you think. If you're really, really lucky and you have a lot of family history, you may have things called heliographs or daguerreotypes, which are images on copper plates, or these calotypes, which were the first negatives printed on paper, ambrotypes. I personally have seen some daguerreotypes, and they're very cool, and you can actually turn them into JPEGs on a scanner. So if you have them, don't forget about them. But most of us are really familiar with things like slides and the old paper photographs, which I'm going to call analog photographs for this conversation, because we have the ever-present digital photographs now. I mean, everybody's got a cell phone with a camera on it. Even some of the flip phones have cameras, so almost everybody has a camera at their fingertips, and we really use them. So your photographs really are everywhere. If you're of my age range, I'm going to be 60 next year, probably you're going to find most of your photographs in things like albums and in frames. Don't forget, you have them, they're hanging on your wall. Consider them when you're putting together your photo history. You may also be a lot more savvy than most people, and you have a Google Drive full of photographs. This is one of my Google Drives with some of my photographs. This is actually from the eclipse a few years ago, and then some flowers from my garden. But I have photographs everywhere, and that's a concern. I'm going to encourage you to start gathering them all and putting them in one place. But I think this is what a lot of people of the 2 generations, you either have boxes and boxes of photographs, maybe stashed away in your basement, on shelves, in a storage room, or you have them on your cell phone. And these are really concerns. You want to get everything in one place. But don't forget, sometimes you have things just on Instagram. Maybe you have a family photograph that you like that a niece or a nephew took, or a grandchild, and you have it on Instagram. You have things on Facebook. You have things on Pinterest, Twitter, and email. And back to the phone, you may also have them in text. I had a friend that told me the other day, I've got to show you this picture of my grandkids. And she's like, but I don't know where it is. And she's like going through her Gmail, no, it's not there. Going through her cell phone photographs, no, it's not there. Finally, she found it in a text. So we really do have photographs everywhere, and it's really important to try to figure out where you have everything. So I encourage you to start thinking about that process now if you're going to be writing your photo history book or putting it together, and finding all of your sources. So some sources you may not think about are, there's a lot of online newspapers where you can find things about your family history and clip them and actually turn them into JPEGs. So this is the Google search for the newspapers. This is just the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. There's also the Jewish Newspaper Reference has a huge digital resource. And I wanted to show you something really cool I found. When I started to write my personal history, one of the first things, naturally you go and you Google your own name. I put my own name in, and what did I find? I hope you can see this at the bottom. I found my birth announcement. My birth announcement was in the Jewish Outlook in 1961, shows my age, sorry. But I was able to clip it and turn it into a JPEG. These are the kind of things that you can gather and make your photo history really rich and meaningful by using some of these resources that are available to you. Plus, they can give you a lot of personal history. When I was researching my one grandmother, I found some things about her that I didn't know. I found that she had been married before and nobody had ever talked about it. So it's fascinating what you can learn from some of these old archives. And you can use a lot of that information in your digital history. Now, I do have to do a little disclosure here. If you're using information from these online resources, most of them are going to be copyrighted. So you should be covered under fair use doctrine if you're going to be using these for personal use. So if you're just going to be doing a personal history for your friends or your family, you're not going to be selling it, you should be okay if you turn these into JPEGs. But if you're going to do anything else with them or make multiple copies, I really encourage you to talk to a lawyer about it, because I would hate to have you putting together your amazing personal history and somebody finding and slapping you with a cease and desist order. I'm always about being safe rather than being sorry. And like I did say, you can turn a lot of these clips now into JPEGs. You can do it, sometimes you can just right click on it and do a save as and save it as a JPEG. But you can also do things like download it or paste it into Word or PowerPoint and size it and then turn it into a JPEG, which is really fascinating, because most personal histories, when you're doing them like in places like Shutterfly, they do require you to have things in the JPEG format. And that's just a fancy way of saying a digital photograph. Like I said in the beginning, my husband and I wrote the Four Stills book back in 2007, and this is relevant to the copyright issue. And we actually had a contract to do book number 2, and we were so excited. When we did book number 1, we had all of these amazing photographs from the people that took them. You know, we had they opened up their photo albums to us, and they're like, we took all these photos and they're ours. And so we were able to easily have them sign a release because we were selling, the books were for sale. When we went to do book 2, people started coming out of the woodwork. I have all these amazing photographs. And we would say to them, okay, great. Can you sign off that you own them? Well, they're like, I don't own them. I downloaded it off of Facebook. I turned it into a JPEG off of Pinterest. We actually had to cancel our second contract because we could not find who took the photos originally. And so that is a concern. That's why I always add a little disclosure here. It's really important to protect yourself when you're dealing with old photographs and copyrighted materials. I also want to do a second public service announcement, because this is what's happening to a lot of our analog photographs. Do you see these photographs? These are from my actual album of my dog Carmel Ann, who I lost a few years ago. I was devastated when she died in 2016, and I opened her baby album, her puppy album, and look what I found. You can see in the upper corner here, this isn't just a white spot from the photograph. This is where the photographs are disappearing before my very eyes. Photo developing is the chemicals in the air are causing the disappearing act. So these analog photographs you have, these paper photographs you have, if you're not careful, they're going to vanish. Some of the old Polaroids, if anybody's old enough to remember the old Polaroids, some of them are going completely black and you can't see any image in them at all. A lot of the ones that you had printed at like Walmart or Giant Eagle, they're fading to white. So it's really important to start looking at your photographs now, your old analog photographs now, and do something about them. And the thing I always encourage is to scan them and turn them into JPEGs and do some preservation. You can see, I'm going to go back for a second. This photograph is what I had originally. I used my scanning software and I repaired it. Now I have just a fairly, it's a fairly sophisticated editing program. But it's not, professional, top of the line. But I was able to salvage some of it. So I encourage you, please get your photos off of the shelves as soon as you can and look at them. And just make sure that they're still there and that you still have them. I would hate to see you sit down to write your personal history in a year or two and have your photographs having completely disappeared. So I just want to ask in the chat, and you can just pop me a yes or no. Has anybody been saying the same thing with your photographs disappearing, or worse, sometimes sticking to the plastic if they're in those plastic sleeves? Type me a yes or a no if anybody's been seeing this. No, well, that's good, Kristen. I'm glad you're not seeing that. It's really important that, yeah, Mickey, I'm sorry. Might be time to start getting your things scanned. It's so devastating when you go and you try to find plastic sleeves. Oh, Amelia, that was the worst. I found so many of my old photographs from college stuck to the plastic sleeves. Trying to unpeel them was so challenging. I would sit there and do inch by inch by inch by inch trying to get them unpeeled. So it's really frustrating. So this is the time to stop the loss of your photos now and preserve your photo history. So it's kind of scary. So that's why it's really important. Okay, so step 3 in our journey is the preserve, tell, and show. And it's the old chicken and the egg. Like, what came first? Are you gonna, when you're gonna write your story, are you gonna use your photos first, or are you gonna use your text first? There's no right or wrong answers, folks. It's your choice. So you may have this great family story in your mind that you want to write, and you want to create a photo history for it. Write it out first, and then add the photos. Or if you're like me, I have the photos and then I want to write the caption. So there really is no right or wrong, but the key to this is the preservation. Get your photos preserved now while you still have them. I hate to have people losing them. This is what I use. I use an Epson scanner. I love my Epson scanner. It's specifically for photographs and slides, and it helps you to turn anything that's paper and those daguerreotypes and things as metal into a JPEG with a simple scan. It's a flatbed scanner. You put it on, you run it through, it creates a JPEG, and you can edit. So you can turn to JPEGs things like love letters, poetry, anything that's flat that you can lay on your scanner, you can turn it into a JPEG. And actually, when we were writing the Forest Hills book, we turned a bowling pin, a duck pin bowling pin. It was about this big. We turned it into a JPEG because it was really important to tell about the duck pin bowling alley that was down on Mortimer Boulevard when the borough was young. So it's really important to start scanning all of your analogs and getting them in. And just another quick chat. Has anybody scanned any of their old photographs? Started that process? Anyone scanners out there? Anybody have a scanner that they like? Nikki, you've started great. I hope you have your scanner. You're like, oh, Flip Pal. I'll have to research that at Queen. I don't know what that is. I'll have to look at that. Amelia, good. I'm glad you started. That's awesome. That's really good. You just don't want to lose things. That's half the battle here.
I'm going to interject here, Jody,
Sure.
and say that the library has a scanner that is available for public use, and our public computers have image editing software on them as well. So if you don't have a scanner, if you don't have image editing software, come to the library and we can help you out.
Oh, that's so awesome. Kristen, I see you've done some scanning and you want to talk about organizing. Well, I've got you covered. We're going to talk about that in just a second. Organizing is really critical to your process. And that's actually our next slide. So you have to decide what works for you. I'm a computer gal. I want things on my hard drive in my house, and I'm really anal retentive, so I back it up to my cloud storage. Some people like the little flash drives, the little thumb drives, because they're portable. They're going to take this and put it on a PowerPoint that they're going to take to all their family events. Some people want it on a CD, DVD. So however you do it, it has to be a way that you understand and that's logical to you. For some people, it's simply a folder that says personal history, and they dump everything in one place. I have a client who, she wanted to do her photo history. She wanted everything by years. So she put pictures of her kids in folders by years. And she had them all organized so that when she was putting together her story, she could go to 1965 and she knew child A was born then and child B was born in 1971. And she could create her story from that. So it has to be logical and meaningful. Those are the two big words when you're creating your storage for your photo history, is logical and meaningful. Let me get the slide to go. Does that help at all, Kristen, or do you need a little more detail?
Sorry about that. I was unmuting. That's helpful. It's hard. I find it very hard when I'm starting with such disorganization to bring organization.
So that's another place where it's really helpful to get it all scanned in the one big folder, and then write your story or how you want to do it and organize it by that. And I'm actually going to have a little bit more of a talk about organization when we talk about putting together a book. So that will help you at the end. There's a free handout I'm going to give to everybody.
Great, thanks.
Okay. All right, great. So let's go back to preservation. So I want to talk about how you're going to write your story. So again, you're going to decide, are you going to write your story in full captions, or are you going to write it in full paragraphs? And whatever you decide, I encourage you to type it up maybe into a Word document or into a notepad document and keep it, because if you're going to do a book like a Shutterfly or one of those type of books, you can actually paste what you write into that system. I never, ever want to see somebody sitting down to one of those systems and trying to write their family history into that. I can tell you right now, they are not built for that. They're not that user-friendly. So write it all in a Word doc or in a notepad, and then paste it into your new book or whatever format you're going to be writing. So storyboards are a little bit, I think, Kristen, to address one of the things you were talking about, is I encourage people to create a storyboard. And it can be as simple as just taking an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper and writing out very general terms. On page 1, I'm going to talk about my birth and a little bit of text about that. On page 2, when I was 2 years old. And I don't want any text for that because I wasn't talking then, so I just want it to be pictures. And then maybe page 3, I moved and I was 2 years old. And here's a little bit about, what we did when I was 2. So that's a really simple storyboard you can put together. Or you can create something much more elaborate. So you can say, oh, I want to talk about my birth, and it's really important. I want to show my crib, and I want to show a picture of my room, and I want a picture of mom and dad on the page, and my big sister, and then at the bottom, I want to showcase baby me. And then I want to have a little bit of text. I was born on a dark and stormy night. Snoopy reference, folks. I was born on a dark and stormy night. So you can do this as simple or as complex as you want. And you can do it on a piece of white paper, just generally page 1, or I created this little thumbnail planner because I'm super picky, I guess is a good word. When I do a personal history book, there's times when I want page 2 and page 3 to face each other. Like page 1, I maybe want to showcase something really special and individual, but pages 2 and pages 3 kind of go together. Maybe it's page 2 is the pictures of my bedroom, and then here's the story of my bedroom furniture. Here's the story of when I was this or did that. And I want them to go together. And by creating the storyboard in the actual way that most of the places like Shutterfly, Snapfish, even CBS, Walmart, and those kind of places, the way that they put the books together, you can then have your book become very logical. And Megan said she's going to offer the link to the free storyboard. If you don't understand how to use it, please feel free to message me. I have my email on it, or give me a call, and I'm happy to walk you through it. Yeah, I found it a very valuable tool.
Right now. Oh, sorry, Jody. That link is in the chat now. So if you have any trouble downloading it, let me know and we can get that sorted out for you. It also should have been sent out as a link with the Zoom meeting information this afternoon. But yeah, feel free to reach out to me or to Jody with any issues that you'd have with that document.
And a little tip and trick when you're doing one of these storyboards, do it in pencil. It's kind of old-fashioned, but you want to be able to erase it, because you might go halfway through and you go, oh, I don't really like this story, or I want to move such and such to such and such. And by having it erased makes it a lot easier. So that's just a little helpful hint, is to organize it in using pencil as your medium. I do need to do a disclosure on this slide. I am not an affiliate marketing with any of the places I'm going to recommend, and I'm giving you my honest opinion because I've made books in not all, but most of these sites. And so these are my personal opinions, and there are things I like and don't like about them. So because I am not an affiliate with any of them, I feel comfortable giving you my unvarnished opinion. But you have sites like CVS, the drugstore, where you can do a photo history book and go pick it up the same day. You can do them on Walmart.com. You can do them on Shutterfly. You can do them on Snapfish. I know Sam's Club, Costco, they all have photo history, photo book creators. So you really need to pick a site that's best for you. And we're going to talk a little bit about them as we go along. But one of the things, they're expensive. They are very, very expensive. So I encourage you to look for coupons and for discounts when you're doing this, because the price points can vary. I did a book for a client that was $75 for 25 pages. She was very happy with it and loved it. But for me, that would have been like out of my price range. But she had certain needs that she wanted met. So we did it that way. But just so you're aware, once you put your email address in most of these sites, they're going to start to send you coupons. And I've had them every now and then, they'll do a free book where all you pay is shipping. So you might want to look for those too. So when I did my first history book, and I told you I would explain that photo that was on the very front, my first book was a tragedy. And even though it was the loss of a dog who I loved, my Carmelian, who just passed October 23rd of 2016, it was the story of her life. And I organized mine on my computer just by numbering. You can see I numbered my photos of what I wanted first, second, third, fourth. And then this was before 1 because I wanted 2 pictures on a page, 5 and 6. So it was as simple as that. So when I uploaded it to the CVS website where I did that first book, I was able to upload them in the order that I wanted them. I also practiced what I preach. I wrote my entire story in a Word document. You can see it starts out, she was sitting in her water bowl, staring at me with those little dark brown eyes. So it's really important to have your story and to know it. Photo histories, while they are so rewarding, they do take time if you want to get something out of it that's very meaningful in the end. So don't shortchange yourself and just try to toss one together very quickly. Really give it the time that it deserves. So if we had met in person, I was going to hand out my book. You can see this is actually what it looks like. It's called Mommy's Best Girl. And I got mine at CVS. And you can see I uploaded all of my pictures, all of the things I had in my computer, I uploaded using their tray feature. And I selected a hardback book with a pink center because she was a little girl dog, and a black border because it was a tragedy. And I set it up that way. And then this one, you'll see, you saw in my, just to go back real quick, inside one, most book sites require the page to be blank. So that's why I actually put those directions in, because you can see on Carmel's book that they forced that page to be blank, and this was the page they allowed me to work on. So I put my photos in and I pasted my text in, and I went on through each of I think Carmel's book was 20 pages long. And then you can see the inside cover was going to be blank. And so it gives you those directions. So that's why I tried to create that little thumbnail to show you what it's going to look like when you actually get that book. And I'm sorry I can't pass my actual books on. When we meet in person, when this whole COVID thing is over, I would be happy to show my books in person next time we're able to do that. The next one I did was another one that was a tragedy. And you can see again, I picked a black book. This one I did through Shutterfly though, because I wanted it to have a rich look to it. And the Shutterfly books, while they are the most expensive of all of the books that I've made, they have a quality about them that's just beautiful. You can see this white strip in the middle. That's an actual fabric binding, at least on the version that I picked. And you can put photos on the back cover and a caption above the little UPC symbol. You can frame a photo on the front. You can put text. Not all of the book services allow you to go into this much detail, but I really like that the Shutterfly one did. And so you can see again, this one I actually ordered by, there were poems and there were photos. So I didn't show my back end on that, but on my back end, I had, for each 2-page set, I had a poem in a folder and a Word document. A Word document with a poem and the photo in the folder. And so as I went along, I uploaded them in that order so that I knew I was writing my book the way I wanted to write it. In this book I actually wrote, it was to be used at the unveiling of my mother-in-law's husband. He passed last year, and sadly because of COVID, we couldn't do the unveiling. But I presented this book to my mother-in-law in memory of her husband around the anniversary of when he passed. So, and she was just so incredibly touched by it. And it was her poetry, her words, and photographs she had taken of her husband throughout the years. And so you can see, I wanted to showcase this beautiful picture of their wedding and then a poem she wrote about him. So that's what I was talking about when you're organizing it. And Kristen, hopefully this will help you when you're organizing protocols, is that you want to have it planned before you do it. And I knew in this one that I wanted to showcase this particular picture with this particular poem, which is called Widowhood. next to each other, because that's what my mother-in-law was going through. She was going through this very sad time, but yet she was celebrating this beautiful marriage that she had. And so I wanted to showcase it in that way. So I was able to think through on paper and pencil, of course, with my eraser handy. I actually always need an extra eraser to sit down and write the history out as I went along. So the next part of our journey is really the most important part about some assembly required. So you found all your photographs, you've decided what kind of story you're going to do, you've gotten organized, you've got everything scanned. Now you have to put it together. And there are many, 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 many choices. There's many places you can use, like we talked about the Shutterflies and the Snapfishes and the CDSs. And when you get into each of these sites, there's another array of choices. So you have to think, do I want a 4x6? Do I want an 8x8? Do I want an 8x10, an 11x14? Do I want same day, glossier paper? Do I want to design my own book? A lot of these services offer you, they say upload 60 photographs and we'll make your own book. And then they charge you to make it, they charge you extra because they make it for you. You have to decide if you want text, hardcover or softcover, and you have to decide how much you want to spend. But Shutterfly and places like that, those aren't your only options. You can do something as simple as I have put together a family history that was nothing more than having everything converted to a JPEG, printed out on white paper, and I took it to Kinko's FedEx and I bound it with the old GBC binders. I don't know if any of you know what that is, the plastic GBC binders. And it turned out to be a really nice little history. And that was really exciting. It met the need for what I wanted. You can put it on a CD. My husband's family has a ton of photographs on a DVD with music to them. And so when we want, sometimes we'll sit down and we'll watch that. And that's how his father decided to preserve their photo history, is he put it on a DVD with music. So you have that option too. So you're not limited in how you preserve your personal history. I guess I'm old-fashioned in that I like a book. And I personally like the 10x8s. I like them to be a little taller and a little sturdier. I like the hardbacks. So you have to decide, and there are no right or wrong. It's really just figuring out the options that you want. So real quick, I want to do a real quick survey. Would anybody want to see how to actually build a Shutterfly or a Snapfish book live as a class? I mean, would that be something that would be interesting to you? I had been thinking about putting that together pre-COVID, of course, that I had planned on, just having a pre-planned person to bring their photos, and we would do a book in an hour or 2-hour session. I don't know, is there any interest in that? Any yeses, nos? You want to just give me a quick yes or no? And I take no offense if it's a no. I see a thumbs up. We have a yes. Somebody uses Shutterfly all the time, possibly to learn more, interested. Okay, great. So Megan, maybe that's something we can talk about after. You and I had talked about that when we first met. So maybe we can do part 2 of this. That's awesome. Thank you, everybody. I'm glad to see you're still out there too. Okay, we're going to move on to some assembly required. Now, if you didn't have an interest, and hopefully you can all join me for my next one, and you are a visual learner, there are a ton of great videos out on YouTube. I find YouTube to be my training of choice these days. And I gave you 2 examples of YouTubes that you can watch, one for Shutterfly and one for Snapfish. And they really do show some of the basics. They don't show all the tips and tricks. I think it's really helpful to have somebody doing it live and in person to show you all of the tips and tricks, because there are so many neat things you can do with these services. So just to sum up some assembly required, which is really important for you. I want you all to think about when you're doing this, find your price point and the service that works best for you. Talk to people. What do you like and don't like about your books? I can tell you that I love the quality of the Shutterfly books, but the CBS book I did for Carmel, while it was really pretty, it turned out it was printed just on photograph paper. So they basically turned my photographs, my JPEGs, into a page of photographs. So my concern is that book's not going to last as long as if it was on a glossy acid-proof or acid-resistant paper that'll last longer. And I didn't know that when I did the book. They weren't that clear on their website what the quality of the book was. So you kind of have to live and learn. That's why you might want to start out with something small and get a feel for it, or ask your friends what they use and like. And I had seen examples of shutterflies and I knew what I was getting. When you're doing the sites, if you are going to do any of these sites, always read their directions very carefully. I know in this day and age, people hate to read directions, but it is really important to read their directions because they're all just a little bit different. Also, when you're cutting and pasting or copying and pasting your text, which I strongly encourage you to do, proofread it. I found one of the sites, and I can't remember if it's Shutterfly or if it was the Snapfish, turned all of my apostrophes into some wonky character. I had no idea what the character was, and I had to go through the book page by page and find all of my apostrophes and correct them back to an apostrophe. It was the strangest thing I'd ever seen. Also, some of them save automatically, but some of them don't. I lost the first version of my Carmel book because I didn't realize that the CVS site did not save, at least when I did it a couple years ago. It wasn't saving. And whatever I did, I lost it and I had to go back and rebuild it. So do save frequently. I do know when you do save it, you can go back in another day and get it. And a little quick tip, if you do that and save it, the next day, miraculously, you might get a 50 or 60% off coupon in your email. So you were willing to pay full price, but wait, coupon comes. Always do a final review of your book when you're done. Everything. Make sure the pictures are in the right order. Make sure your text is right. The worst thing I did in my first book is I didn't do a full proofread. And I know better. I proofread for a living. And I found a typo in it. And I was just devastated. Nobody else sees it. Nobody else knows it. But I know it's there. So I do encourage you, even if you have to print out a paper one and hand it to somebody else, do a final review. Also, follow the checkout instructions really carefully, especially if you have a coupon. I find a lot of these sites, the place where you put the coupon code, they kind of hide it, or they don't encourage you to look at it, and you'll be checking out, and all of a sudden you'll realize your bottom line total was like $25 more than you thought. And I'll go back and look, and sure enough, I didn't even see the place to put in a coupon code. They had it way off to the side. So just to be aware of that. And then your needs. The Carmel book, when I did that, I was having a really hard time after she passed, and I wanted something in my hand now. The beauty of the CVS book, I did it one night. I went to the store the next morning and I picked it up. So if you're having a family reunion, or you have to do, God forbid, a funeral or some event where you want to have a photo history book immediately, you can pay extra and have it same day. A site like CVS does have a same day option. It might not be the quality you want, but it'll be there if you need it. And then the Shutterflies and the Snapfishes of the world, they can take up to 10 days for you to get your book. So plan that. Be sure to plan that all out when you're doing this, so that you have the book in time if you are doing it for an event. So the very last one I told you, I think this is one of my favorite parts of preserving family history, is thinking outside the frame. And what do I mean by that? So thinking outside the frame is, you traditionally think of photographs being your history and your story. But maybe you have things that you collect that tell your story. Maybe you collect really amazing masks, or you collect books, or you collect something, and you want to tell the story of your collection. You can either take photographs of your collection, or you can scan covers of things, you can scan paper, pretty much anything that you can lay on a flatbed scanner. Like I said in the beginning, we turned a bowling pin into a JPEG. You can turn into a JPEG to tell your story. Maybe your house is your story. Maybe you live in a historic house and you want to tell the story. Maybe you live in a Sears house. There are a few Sears houses in this area, and you want to tell that story. Or maybe you want to tell your neighborhood, or maybe you want to tell your recipes. And I'm going to show you in the next example of where I thought outside the frame and I turned recipes into a story. But the thing to remember is you have a story. You have a personal history. And when you start looking around at what you have in your photos and outside the frame, you're going to find something beautiful that I really encourage you to sit down and preserve. Your family's going to thank you for it. I guarantee your family is going to thank you for preserving that photo history. And I thought outside the frame, I think it was about 1.5 years ago. My mother was feeling a little down. And I wanted to do something special for her. And I had found, and I'm going to try to make this a little bigger. Hopefully I won't lose it. But I had found all of my grandmother's handwritten recipes cards, old fashioned. She wrote them in pen on index cards, and they were disintegrating. I was devastated. I picked them up and they were crumbling in my hands. And I thought, I have to do something. And I took those recipes and I very carefully, one by one, mapped them out and laid them on my scanner. And I turned them into a cookbook for my mom, 3 generations of the Shapiro Hazen family. And she was just taken aback by how beautiful it turned out. Now, this one I did on Snapfish. I chose the least expensive option because I wanted it to be something small just to give her. And I wanted it to be glossy so that if she used it, like if she wanted to make grandma's nut rolls, she could take it into the kitchen. It lays flat. If she spilled flour on it, it would wipe right off. So it was just such a neat little gift. And this one was probably one of the least expensive ones I did. I think it cost maybe $9 because I had a 60 or 70% off coupon. But you can see I laid out each recipe. I added little embellishments. This is what I was talking to you about. Sometimes it's helpful to watch the videos that they offer, but to have somebody show you, oh, I can put embellishments in. I can do this. I can do that. Because these services have a lot of really neat features that you can use to really customize your book and really make it speak to who you are and to your story. So I added a little mixer. I added a little oven mitt. I added some spatulas and things. And it really turned out to be a cute little book. So we've made it. We're at the end of our journey. We have about 15 minutes, so that's awesome. And I just want to sum it all up for you. I've taken you through kind of quickly how to preserve, 5 steps to preserve your photo history. And I want to tell you the most important thing, and that is to start today. If you procrastinate and you say, I'm going to add an image tomorrow, my fear, because I've seen it happen to my own photographs, is you are going to end up with a white photograph. All of your photographs are going to start, your old analogs, if you're not careful, they're going to start to disappear. And I would hate to see that. So I really encourage you, start today. Start to gather your history. Think about what you want to say. Think about your story. It's really important to do it now, because if you procrastinate, you might not have it tomorrow to get your photographs. So I do have to add a little plug. If you need help, I am here to do it. This is one of the things I do. I'm a virtual assistant. I have my own business. I've been in business since 2017. And one of my many services, I offer primarily secretarial services, but I also do offer scanning, writing, and editing services. And so feel free to reach out to me if you want to learn more. I'm happy to help. I do a free 1-hour consultation. We can do it maybe in a consultation, or you can hire me to do it. It's totally up to you. There's absolutely no pressure. And I do have a sample planning guide, which I gave you, and I am working on an interview guide. So it's really important when you try to put a photo history together, if you're talking to an older relative, to really ask open-ended questions and the right questions to help develop that history. So I'm developing that. It's not quite finished yet. I had hoped to have it done by today's presentation, but it's not. But if you're interested in it, email me and I'll be happy to send it to you, and I have my email address there. So I want to thank everybody, and I want to open it up to questions. If we have a few minutes for some questions, you can either put it in the chat. Megan, if there's anything in the chat that people have asked, or if people want to unmute, if you're brave and want to unmute. And I'll be happy to answer questions the best I can. If I don't know, I'm happy to figure it out and get back to you too, because I do not admit to knowing everything.
It looks like we don't have any questions in the chat yet, but I'll start out with one of my own, actually. How would you best recommend scanning a 3-dimensional object? You said that you had done the bowling pin, or something like collectibles or hobbies or anything like that. Is there a best way to go about doing that?
Well, what I found is it takes 2 people if it's something that's going to roll. With that bowling pin, we had to do 2 of us. And we had to kind of leverage the top where I was running the scanner and Joel was holding the lid down so that the item wouldn't move. So sometimes you just have to improvise. You can also take pictures of your 3-dimensional objects from each dimension, or from the, you know, from the best side. But I was surprised how many things I could actually turn into a JPEG from my scanner. I did some pins, some ladies' brooches, and put them on the scanner. So it helps if most scanners have a white background at the top, you know, that's like the lid is usually white, but you have to look at your item and see what color it is and how you want it to show up. I have a piece of blue velvet I use on a lot of light colored things that I don't want a black background or a dark background or a white background. I mean, that I don't want a white background, that I do want a dark background. I put my blue velvet on the top of my scanner so that when I close it, that you get that blue background behind it. So you kind of have to think almost a little bit like a designer, you know, what's going to make this pop? And so I find that very helpful. That one little piece of blue velvet has come in very, very handy with my scanner. So I hope that helps, Megan.
Yes, thank you. That's wonderful.
Queen, thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed. I'm glad you enjoyed the session. What's my favorite cloud service? I like Google, I think. That's the one I've been using right now. I haven't actually explored too many of the other ones. Google seems to be pretty user-friendly. I shared a couple albums with people. I went to a bridal shower a few years ago and I was going to do a little history of that. And I popped them into the Google Drive. I made a folder for the mom and the bride, and they told me which photos they wanted and which photos they didn't. So it seems to be the most intuitive of all of these. That's truly the only one I've had experience with. Megan, I don't know from the library if you guys have a recommendation.
Google Photos would be my recommendation as well, actually. Dropbox is also an option. You know, any kind of cloud-based file storage. But I know personally, my family likes to travel a lot. And, you know, I'm one of 4 siblings, and, you know, with my 2 parents, we're all taking pictures on our smartphones, and we will start at the beginning of a trip a shared Google album, and then we all upload all of our photos as we're taking them. And then at the end of the trip, you know, there's no sending emails back and forth. Everything is already shared in one location, which has been really helpful. You know, we went to Spain, and so we had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of photos, and they're all in one place already. So big plug for Google Photos from me.
That's wonderful. And you mentioned Dropbox. That is a good choice for some folks. Dropbox has, I think, up to 2 something, I forget the measurement, of free space on Dropbox. And the thing I do like about Dropbox is that you can create folders. Obviously, you can do that in Google Drives too. But for some reason, I find the folders in Dropbox to be a little more intuitive than the Google one. Although I do store my photos on the Google one. I also have a service I use for my entire computer called iCloud. And I just recently moved over to doing that. I used to be very old-fashioned and had to back up things just to CD, but I've decided that I have to come into the 21st century and use a cloud base for everything. So I do use that, but that's just as a backup. That's not where I actually go to work on my documents. So Lisa, you said you're overwhelmed with where to start. At the beginning. And I don't mean to sound flip by that. I just start thinking through work through the 5 steps. What story do you want to tell? You may decide you have several stories you want to tell. And just start at the beginning. And you might want to write it in your head first, because maybe your story is first. Or maybe you just want to sit down with all of your photographs in front of you on the floor or on the table and just look at them and see what they tell you. But the most important thing is just to start. You will see once you take that first step, it's like anything, when, you know, it's an elephant. How do you eat an elephant? Please, PETA, no PETA people come to my door. I don't condone eating elephants, but how do you eat an elephant is one bite at a time.
You know, I just have boxes and boxes and boxes up in my attic, and they're just obviously all decaying as we speak.
Yeah, start with scanning. Start with your very first, if you have a scanner, open that first box and start scanning. Now, the hard part is what do you do with the paper ones when you're done? A lot of people are just throwing them out once they get them scanned. I find that heartbreaking. I'm so old-fashioned, and I think I need to get over that. But I do have a comfort level when I scan my old photographs that they are not going to be decayed and lost. You can't recycle them, which is really sad. The chemicals don't go into any recycling. But just literally, I feel your pain because I probably have, I don't know, 100 and some photo albums. And when I wanted to start one of my first histories, I literally just went to the first one I knew where I had my pictures, and I threw them all on the floor and I just looked at them. And then I found every day it got a little bit easier. So I know that that's not probably the answer you wanted, but it is really important to just start at the beginning and just to start. And you will see it does go very quickly. And you will, sadly, you'll find a lot of things. Why did I ever take this picture? And you'll just throw it out right off the top. Why on earth would I have taken a picture of fill in the blank? At my wedding, my nephews took pictures, and they laugh about this to this day. They took pictures of people's butts and garbage cans. And we're keeping a couple of them because it's funny. But, you know, when people take pictures, they take pictures of everything. We have a story behind it, so it's part of our personal history. But if I had found that just in like my college pictures, I'm like, what is this? It's going in the trash. Or a picture where you look at your absolute worst. Don't keep it. There is no reason to keep it. I mean, not that you're editing your story, but you want your book to be beautiful to you. Mickey says you use Google Cloud. Yeah, I do agree with that. Anybody else? I know we're getting really close to our 3 o'clock window. Well, I just want to thank everybody.
I have another question.
Sure.
Oh, geez, it just flew out of my brain. I can't remember it. I'm sorry.
No, email me.
I'm in the middle of
my email's in the presentation. My email's in the presentation. Please email me. I'll put it in the chat.
Okay, thank you.
Let's see if I can do 2 things at once. Feel free to email me. It's my full name, jodybethshapiro@gmail.com. Well, I want to thank everybody. It's been lovely chatting with you. I'm so sorry we couldn't do it in person. I appreciate the Zoom-iquette that everybody, was able to chat with me and share your information, and we could talk about what is meaningful to you. I really hope we can try to do another session, but I really hope that, maybe in a couple months that you will email me and tell me that you have a photo history book and show it to me, even if it's in a Zoom. I would love to see it because your history is so important. And I really think you'll be so excited. You're welcome, Amelia. You're welcome, Queen. Thank you. It's just been such an honor to speak with all of you today. But I do hope that you'll contact me in a few months and tell me that you have a photo history book. Even if you start with something as simple as your recipes, or maybe it's just the birth of your first child. But start. It's really important to start.
Oh, Jody, I did remember my question.
Perfect.
These services where you take your photos and you send them away to be scanned, are they safe? I just worry about sending all my precious photos.
Yeah, I hear you on that. And I think most of them are safe. I would do an extensive Google review before you do anything. And I shouldn't give a plug to myself, but I had a client that wanted to do a service and she researched it. And she only researched one and she didn't like what she saw. And she didn't even know I did this for as one of my services. She said, I don't trust, and I will not name the company. Can you scan my photographs for me? She literally handed me 3,000 photographs. And over the course of about 2 months, I scanned all of her 3,000 photographs.
Wow.
And she was thrilled. But other people, there are some local ones that people just love. So really do your due diligence. It has to be your comfort level. To me, if I see even one negative in a Yelp, I cringe. But some people, the one negative, like, yeah, there's always going to be one unhappy person, and they ignore it. I have a very low risk tolerance, I guess. But yeah, there are great services. There used to be a place in Squirrel Hill. I hope they're still there, that they've survived this COVID. I believe it's called Rewinds, and they do photographs. It's local, so you don't have to mail your photographs. And that, for some people, I recommend them. To a lot of people, gives a comfort level. The ones you mail to, truthfully, right now with the way the postal service is, I think just on that alone, I would not be comfortable mailing. But again, I have a really low risk tolerance.
Yeah, no, I was thinking of then I was thinking of the local one, because I live right near Squirrel Hill, of just like walking or, taking them over there.
Mhm.
And I'm
Yeah,
guessing the
Green Lines
local
is
people
nice.
don't lose anything.
Right. And I mean, you risk that, my client risked that with me handing me 3,000 photographs. I mean, you obviously, as a vendor, you're going to be as careful as you can. And what's really scary was some that are really fragile. And I was devastated. I had one of her photographs that literally fell apart in my hands. It was
Mhm.
so old. And she knew, we had discussed it before, that it was a risk giving me this particular photograph. And I was so, so careful. But it was over, I think it was 100 years old. It was really old. And the corner fell off. And we were just devastated. But, you work through it. And I made it right for her, obviously. I didn't charge her for that particular round of scanning. FlipPal, Queen, I'm not familiar with that service.
So I did a quick Google of that, and it looks like it's a portable scanner specifically made for scanning photographs. So it's actually a piece of hardware. So I don't know anything about that myself, but it looks like they've got a website. If you Google FlipPal, it looks like it's designed for exactly this kind of service or a project. So if you don't have a photo scanner at home, that might be a good budget option.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. I have to look into that. I know there are a couple scanners, the old-fashioned kind that look like a fax machine. I'll date myself, where you put the photos in like this and then they come through. And I have a family friend that she loves hers, and it was a real easy installation, but all of her photographs were the same size. So it only took, I think it only went as big as 4x6. And, some folks have photographs that are 8x12 or bigger. So you have to, that's why the finding part that we talked about in the very beginning is really important. And you may need to hire somebody to scan 1 or 2 photographs for you, and then use one, like a thing like FlipPal on the rest. So
And
that's a really great.
earlier, also the library does have a scanner that's available. So we charge $1 to scan for any number of pages. So, please don't bring us a box of 3,000 photos, but, if you've got a couple dozen photos that you want to start with, we are happy to scan those in for you at the library for a very, very reasonable cost.
And another plug for the library, I believe you still have access to some of the genealogy services for free. Is that still the case?
So Ancestry Library is available for free in the library. Earlier on during the COVID situation, they were offering it free from home as well, but that's no longer going on. But if you want to come in and use library database resources, we have access to Ancestry. We have access to a lot of newspaper archives, a lot of local history kind of stuff. So, if your family's from the area and you want to do some digging, we've got great resources on that. Resources for finding grave sites. We've got a Find a Grave service. So if you're looking to do, genealogy research that way, we've got all kinds of stuff. All of our online databases are at elibrary.einetwork.net. And I'll go ahead and put that link in the chat so you guys can start looking at that. It's also on our website, ccmellerlibrary.org. But we are happy to, point you in the right direction for any kind of research project that you're working on.
And I'm happy to consult with you also. This is a personal passion of mine. I've written, in addition to the Forstall's book, I've done 3 personal history books, plus I've done a few others for clients. And I am in the process of doing some family tree research as we speak. So I would be happy to chat with you. I would love to. So feel free to message me if you want to chat. So I think we're over our time, Megan. I want to be very respectful. It's 3:04. So thank you, everybody. It's been an absolute joy to talk to you. And hopefully we're going to have part 2 of this and we can actually build a book for somebody.
Yeah, I certainly hope so. It sounds like there's a lot of interest in it. And thank you, Jody, so much for coming in and visiting with us and sharing all of your expertise. It has been such a joy talking to you.